Welcome to NTD News Today. I'm Kevin Hogan. Let's take a look at our top stories. At least 39 people are believed dead after a fire erupts at a migrant facility in Mexico. The facility is just feet from the U.S. border. Free speech in the spotlight in a new lawsuit targeting the Biden administration. It says government officials pressured big tech companies to censor users. Conviction in traditional American values is diminishing, especially among the youth. That's what a poll finds. We hear from an analyst what could happen if this trend continues. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis this week signing the state's universal school choice bill into law. He says school choice makes for better education, but not everyone agrees. We have more information about the shooting at a private Christian school in Tennessee. Find out what's known so far about the tragic killings. At least 39 migrants have died after a fire breaks out at a facility in the northern Mexican city of Ciudad Juarez. The city is just feet from the U.S. border near El Paso, Texas. Most of the victims are believed to be Venezuelan. Emergency service personnel carried their bodies on stretchers to vehicles. Large numbers of first responders and volunteers arrived at the scene to help victims. Those injured were taken to 4 local hospitals. In a statement, Mexico's National Migration Institute said there were 68 adult men from Central and South America staying at the facility. The fire is one of the deadliest to hit the country in years. The president of Mexico is expected to visit Ciudad Juarez on Friday. A school shooting in Tennessee yesterday left 6 people and the shooter dead. Police say the shooter was a woman who identified as transgender and resented having gone to the religious school. Authorities say they are focusing on writings from the shooter to learn more about the motive. They have also released surveillance video from the school. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has the details.
3 children and 3 adult staff members shot and killed at the Covenant School in Nashville, Tennessee, in what police are calling a targeted attack by a heavily armed 28-year-old former student. Police say the suspect was Audrey Hale, who identifies as transgender and is a Nashville area resident, who they say is a former student of the private Christian school located at Covenant Presbyterian Church. A witness near the scene helped identify Hale. Calls started coming in at 10:13 a.m. The shooting happened on an upper level, in a lobby area, not a classroom. President Biden weighed in and called for more gun control.
We have to do more to stop gun violence. It's ripping our communities apart, ripping the soul of this nation.
The officers who took down the suspect have been identified as Rex Engelbert and Michael Colazzo. Police say that happened on the 2nd floor in a common area of the Covenant School, where the suspect had been opening fire through a window at arriving police cars. Officials say writings recovered from Hale revealed that the attack was calculated and planned. A search warrant executed at Hale's home resulted in the seizure of a sawed-off shotgun, a second shotgun, and other evidence. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
Traditional American values, the attitudes that have long defined the United States, are now being abandoned in staggering proportions. That's what a new poll by the Wall Street Journal found. Hard work, patriotism, and religion are no longer as important to Americans. We hear from an award-winning international journalist for some analysis on this phenomenon. Alex Newman, president of Liberty Sentinel Media, it's great to have you with us today.
Great to be here. Thank you, Kevin.
This poll says a quarter century ago, 70% of Americans said patriotism was very important to them. Now that number is about half. In your view, what is driving this trend?
I think the most obvious and the simplest explanation is what is being taught to our children in the public school system and what is coming through the media into Americans' homes through the television and through the newspapers. There has been a concerted campaign to undermine American patriotism, in fact, to radicalize, especially our youth, against our country, to actually turn them against America, against our founding principles, against our system of government. This has been a very deliberate and strategic operation, and obviously it's been fairly successful, as the poll shows.
You touch on the role that the media and the schools have played here. Are there any special interest groups or foreign adversaries that would benefit from this?
There absolutely are. Communist China being chief among them, of course, the Russians, basically all of the communist forces that have had as their objective for decades, in fact, for generations, the utter destruction of the United States and our system of free, limited, and constitutional self-government.
Can you explain a little bit more detail about the role that they've played, these communist forces that you mentioned?
Well, the Soviet infiltration of America's institutions goes back almost a century. And at one point, it became so ubiquitous that our government, our entertainment, our media were actually filled with known Soviet agents. A lot of this came out in the Venona documents. The NSA, our intelligence agencies, had actually intercepted certain communications and were finally able to decrypt them. So we know that there was massive communist infiltration of our institutions. It was ubiquitous in Hollywood. It was ubiquitous within the federal government, especially certain agencies like the U.S. State Department. And obviously the public schools was one of the key institutions that were targeted. Bella Dodd, one of the communist defectors, said that typically the teachers' unions, the National Education Association in particular, would adopt the positions of the Communist Party the very year after the Communist Party adopted them. So we did have foreign subversion, foreign infiltration, but of course there were major domestic players as well. The U.S. Congress investigated back in the early 1950s the tax-exempt foundations, and what they found was that these foundations had been waging a campaign of what the congressional investigators described as subversion against America. In fact, they said there had been a revolution in the United States, and they talked about the revolution as being in the past tense, as in something that took place in the 30s and 40s, that never would have been possible if the foundations had not used the education system to prepare the way in advance. So there has been a very deliberate campaign to undermine the principles our nation is founded on, the patriotism, and of course the morality of the American people, and it's been very successful.
And Alex, you touch on some of these deep roots to this subversion. America's youth lags about 25% behind on average to the elder generation on upholding these values. What will happen to this country, and the world for that matter, if this trend continues?
I think our former president, John Adams, put it best, a very famous quote. He said, "Our Constitution is made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other." And he is absolutely correct. In fact, this was widely understood among our founding fathers. In fact, the nation would never have been founded had it not been for the faith of our founders. In fact, they said so clearly in our founding documents. They said they were going to rely on divine providence for freeing our nation from the tyranny of the British government. And I think it's very plain to see that you cannot have a free system of government without a people that is moral, that is willing to govern themselves. And unfortunately, we're very rapidly approaching a tipping point, I think, where if this is not stopped, our free institutions, our political institutions are going to collapse, and something horrific will replace them.
Going all the way back to the founding documents, Alex Newman, president of the Liberty Central Media, it's so great to have your analysis.
Great to be here. Thank you so much, Kevin.
President Joe Biden's administration has been hit with a free speech lawsuit. The suit claims the president and other top officials pressured big tech to censor users. NTD's Daniel Monahan has the details.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and his Children's Health Defense Organization filed the suit. It claims officials pressured Twitter and other big tech companies to crack down on alleged misinformation. One example was the censoring of any content that reportedly discouraged COVID vaccines, even if the content was true. The suit says former White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki promoted an analysis labeling Kennedy a top misinformation spreader. Kennedy was later banned from multiple platforms, including Instagram. The lawyer says the COVID pandemic brought something with it.
The government began censoring speech for the first time in American history.
According to Kennedy, the Founding Fathers put free expression in the First Amendment because all of the other amendments and rights depend on it.
If a government has the right to censor its critics, to silence its critics, it has license for every atrocity.
The lawsuit says that censorship efforts are responsible even now for the online suppression of facts and opinions about COVID vaccines. The administration has argued in the past that its pressure on big tech companies does not plausibly amount to coercion. Meanwhile, a new report highlights the extent to which former Department of Justice employees are now working at big tech firms. The American Accountability Foundation investigated the resumes of recent hires. It found that more than 360 current employees of Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, and Facebook are former DOJ employees. Likewise, more than 40 DOJ employees previously worked at big tech firms. Congressman Matt Gaetz recently broached a similar concern about lobbying groups while questioning Rabin Group's Elliott Williams.
Mr. Williams, wouldn't the American people feel like this government wasn't so weaponized against them if there wasn't such a revolving door between Department of Justice senior officials and lobbying?
The American Accountability Foundation says the DOJ and big tech have a shared political agenda to silence conservative voices. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
The Department of Justice, Meta, Google, and Amazon did not immediately respond to requests for comment. And speaking of big tech, one of the journalists behind the Twitter files, Matt Taibbi, apparently got a visit from the IRS the same day he testified at Congress. House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan says it could be seen as an attempt to intimidate a witness and is asking the IRS for an explanation. Tune in at 5 o'clock to our business show with Don Ma for more analysis. While the Biden administration faces that big tech collusion lawsuit, former President Trump may soon get an answer in one of his own legal battles. A judge weighs in on the Georgia investigation into alleged election tampering in 2020. He says the DA has to respond to Trump's petition to shut down the grand jury. The special grand jury has reportedly recommended multiple charges linked to conspiracy and other misconduct, but no defendants have been identified. Trump's request is an effort to end a year-long probe into claims that he and his aides meddled in the 2020 election. The investigation was started in early 2021. It was mostly based on a recorded phone call between Trump and Georgia's Secretary of State. Trump appeared to pressure the official to find enough votes to overturn his electoral loss in Georgia. School choice in Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis this week signed the state's universal school choice bill into law. He says it will especially help low-income families. Critics point out it's not clear how much taxpayer money will be used. Here's the story.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis on Monday signed the state's universal school choice bill into law. DeSantis called the law
the largest expansion of education choice, not only in the history of this state, but in the history of these United States.
The governor says Florida already has 1.3 million students attending a school of their choosing. That's through private scholarships, charter schools, and district choice programs.
And if you look at our full-time choice community of 1.3 million, that is a number larger than the entire K-12 enrollments of 35 other states.
The bill removes financial eligibility restrictions for the taxpayer-funded vouchers program for use in private schools. It allows any student eligible in grades K through 12 to participate in the program. Andrew Spar is president of the Florida Education Association Teachers Union. He says the law will divert public money to private schools. In his words, it will drain billions of taxpayer dollars away from the neighborhood public schools that nearly 90% of Florida's parents trust to educate their children. Additionally, this new law will hand over that public money to unaccountable, corporate-run private schools. However, according to DeSantis, the bill lifts school performance by forcing schools to compete. Critics point out that it's apparently not clear how much expanding the voucher program will cost. Florida House Democratic leader Fentress Driscoll says that cost and accountability are grave concerns. In her words, "I am personally concerned, and I think many in our caucus share this sentiment, that this could be devastating to Florida's public schools." However, supporters of the bill highlight how it especially supports low-income families in the state. The law goes into effect on July 1st.
Coming up, the Supreme Court rejects a challenge to a Trump-era tariff, and the Biden administration agrees with the move. We have that and more just after this break. The Supreme Court has rejected an industry challenge to steel import tariffs. They were imposed by then-President Donald Trump in 2018 on national security grounds. Trump said the tariffs were needed to ensure robust levels of domestic steel production. President Biden has left them largely intact. The Biden administration urged the court to reject the challenge. The rule imposed a 25% tariff on imported steel from most countries, along with a 10% tariff on imported aluminum. The tariffs created tension with some U.S. allies. Companies that rely on imported steel brought the lawsuit to the federal government. A year ago, the Supreme Court also turned away a challenge to Trump's steel tariffs. That case applied to Turkish imports. The White House is threatening to veto a pro-fossil fuel bill from House Republicans. The legislative package hopes to defy President Biden's progressive climate-focused policies. The Lower Energy Costs Act is heading to a vote later this week. The package would streamline the environmental review process for energy infrastructure projects, require more onshore oil lease sales, and give greater access to public lands and waters for oil and gas drilling. It would also ban foreign companies with a known record of human rights violations from mining on federal lands. In a statement released on Monday, the White House confirmed that Biden would block the bill if it ever makes it to his desk. The White House says that the proposed energy package would enrich oil and gas companies at the expense of public health and the environment. Supporters say the U.S. has the best health and environmental standards, so it's better to produce oil and gas at home. Turning to Kansas, the state Supreme Court appeals unlikely to limit abortion. The Kansas Solicitor General is arguing that the court's 2019 pro-abortion ruling should be overturned. He said the 2019 ruling, which calls abortion a fundamental right, should be reconsidered in light of the U.S. Supreme Court's 2022 ruling that abortion is not a right protected by the Constitution. The Kansas justices didn't seem to want to consider any changes. Powell spent Monday morning defending two state abortion laws before the court. One is a 2015 ban on second trimester dismemberment abortions, and the other is a 2011 law that regulates abortion providers more strictly than other medical providers. Both laws have been blocked from enforcement due to legal challenges. Kansas law currently allows for an abortion to take place up until 22 weeks, well into the second trimester, and multiple justices appeared doubtful that the state has a compelling reason to treat abortion providers differently from other healthcare providers. The court is not expected to issue its final rulings on the two laws for months. A meat packer is voluntarily recalling 1.7 tons of boneless beef chuck after E. coli was found in a sample. The U.S. Department of Agriculture says the product was packed on February 16th by Kansas-based Elkhorn Valley Packing. It was shipped to retailers, restaurants, hotels, distributors, and other establishments in 9 states. The serial numbers of the meat being recalled can be found on the USDA's website. There are no reports of people getting sick from it. People who bought the product are advised to throw it out or return it to where they purchased it. Customs officers in Virginia have seized hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of designer fakes. The counterfeit clothing, purses, and shoes were found in a single shipment confiscated on March 16th. If they had been real, they would have been worth more than $700,000. U.S. Customs and Border Protection says it included 68 knockoffs from Burberry, Chanel, Christian Dior, Gucci, Hermes, Louis Vuitton, and Yves Saint Laurent. The goods were sent to a Chesapeake address from Seoul, South Korea. No one has been charged in connection with the shipment. More changes coming to Twitter. CEO Elon Musk says soon only paid subscribers will show up in the For You feed. Starting April 15th, the tab you see when you first sign in will only recommend accounts who pay for premium Twitter service. Also, non-subscribers will not be allowed to vote in polls. Musk said the change aims to battle bot accounts. But he's also been pushing people to pay $84 a year for Twitter. Last week, Musk announced that the free blue checkmark was going away. Users who want to keep it will soon have to pay $8 a month or $84 annually. And coming up, Beijing's new trick to influence the U.S., millions of ads poured into legacy U.S. newspapers. We take a deeper dive into how it works. A nuclear-powered U.S. aircraft carrier has docked at a South Korean port. The Pentagon says it's a show of support as tensions grow on the Korean peninsula. We'll have the details soon when we return.
A performance that truly matters for each and every one of us. This is what you've been waiting for. See it at least once in your lifetime. Get tickets now at shenyun.com.
The Fixture Pioneer, CGN. Professional AI intelligent fixtures. All-round integration of 4 systems. High precision, high durability, high quality, 2-micrometer repetition accuracy, more than 80 patent certificates, ISO 9001 approved. Precision clamping to meet your every need. CGM has it all. Pride of Taiwan, CGM.
Welcome back. Despite the U.S. government's current eye on China, Beijing is still pulling out tricks to influence Americans. One of its most recent tactics, tapping into U.S. national media. Here are the details.
China Daily, the Chinese Communist Party's top propaganda outlet, is paying big bucks for ads in over a dozen U.S. newspapers. These ads look very much like opinion articles. Among the newspapers printing them are some of the most influential publications: Time Magazine, the Financial Times, Foreign Policy, and the Los Angeles Times. The paid ads come in the form of news-like supplements titled China Watch, but without exception, they all contain a pro-Beijing spin on contemporary events. One insert from USA Today last June touted Chinese leader Xi Jinping's 2015 visit to a U.S. school. The headline described the visit as having left an indelible mark on students. And another one, posted last November in Time Magazine, 4 pages of flattering coverage of China's leadership and economic growth in a bid to lure foreign investment. According to its latest filing with the U.S. Department of Justice, China Daily spent over $1.2 million on such advertising. That was over a 6-month span from May to October last year. But where did the money come from? The filing shows that China Daily's revenue for the same period grossed more than $5 million, with 98% of the sum funded by its Beijing headquarters. Profits from subscriptions totaled only about $10,000. A China affairs analyst is sending out a word of caution.
The American political establishment, both legislative and executive, should be more conscious of the fact that a foreign totalitarian party's propaganda cannot pass for free speech.
The U.S. government listed China Daily as both a foreign agent and a foreign mission of the communist regime. Under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, any entity listed must disclose its financial activities to the U.S. Justice Department every 6 months.
As more details emerge, one example of pushback came from then Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. He said at the time the State Department designated 6 more China-based media companies as foreign missions. All of them operate in the U.S. He said the move seeks to counter propaganda from communist countries. He added at the time the decision isn't to restrict what outlets can publish in America, but to, quote, ensure that American people can differentiate between news written by a free press and propaganda distributed by the Chinese Communist Party itself.
But it seems it's not just opinion pieces. Chinese state-run media have also had a hand in influencing U.S. elections. That's according to reports filed with the government. Let's zoom in on Iowa. Known for its rolling cornfields, the state found itself at the center of political intrigue in 2018.
But it seems it's not just opinion pieces. Chinese state-run media have also had a hand in influencing U.S. elections. That's according to reports filed with the government. Let's zoom in on Iowa, known for its rolling cornfields. The state found itself at the center of political intrigue in 2018.
Regrettably, we found that China has been attempting to interfere in our upcoming 2018 election.
President Trump tweeting at the time, China is actually placing propaganda ads in the Des Moines Register and other papers, made to look like news. Reports also said the 4-page supplement aimed to undermine support for the Trump-China trade war. And there was a lot of money on the line. At the time, Iowa farmers were projected to lose around $2 billion from the trade wars. That's according to an Iowa State University study at the time. It expands outside the state, too. China has ramped up its efforts in recent years. Reports filed to the Justice Department under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, or FARA, noting China has spent $280 million over the past 6 years to influence U.S. politics. That's more than any other foreign country. And it's not just the U.S. Head of British intelligence agency MI5, Ken McCallum, saying in 2020,
"You might think in terms of the Russian intelligence services providing bursts of bad weather, while China is changing the climate."
Over in Australia, donors tied to Beijing directly paid politicians. That's an attempt to shape Australian foreign policy in China's favor. One case in the area involved a politician named Yang Jian, who was elected in 2011 to New Zealand's parliament. That's after he spent 15 years working for Chinese intelligence. His position in parliament involved dealing with China policy. And in Asia, similar situations played out in the lead-up to Taiwan's 2020 presidential election, with reports noting Chinese officials instructed local media outlets to promote the pro-Beijing candidate. While that candidate lost, Beijing has ramped up other influence efforts in Taiwan, including disinformation ahead of the 2022 elections.
The House has passed a bipartisan bill to strip Communist China of its international status as a developing nation. This would limit the regime's access to certain aid. The bill aims to ensure that China's communist regime doesn't receive any of the preferential treatment in international treaties, agreements, and organizations like developing nations sometimes do. The bill passed with no dissenting votes and now moves to the Senate. Co-sponsor Congressman Young Kim said, quote, "The Chinese Communist Party is exploiting countries in need and receiving preferential treatment in international treaties and organizations. Many international organizations, including the World Trade Organization, provide developing countries with special treatment to increase their economic opportunities." A nuclear-powered U.S. aircraft carrier arrived in South Korea today, the first time since last September. This is as North Korea conducts a series of missile tests.
Leading a carrier strike group, the nuclear-powered USS Nimitz has docked at the Busan Naval Base in South Korea. Seoul's defense ministry said the arrival is in part to mark the 70th anniversary of the U.S.-South Korea alliance. Rear Admiral Christopher Sweeney, commander of the carrier strike group, called the visit a show of U.S. support for South Korea and a deterrent to North Korea's missile threats.
And we don't see conflict with DPRK or the PRC. We really are practicing and assuring our allies at the very basic maritime security level.
Sweeney added that the U.S., South Korea, and Japan are planning a trilateral military exercise after USS Nimitz departs from Busan. The carrier strike group just conducted joint naval exercises with South Korea on Monday. Around the same time, North Korea fired 2 ballistic missiles off its east coast. The U.S. Indo-Pacific Command said the launches pose no direct threat to the U.S. or its allies, but they point to the destabilizing impact of North Korea's nuclear power. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has called for scaling up production of weapons-grade nuclear materials. The country is also reportedly testing an underwater attack drone. All of these adding to its more than 20 ballistic and cruise missile launches this year.
If you have any news tips or feedback for the show, don't hesitate to email us at news.today@ntd.com. Still to come, a giant ad appears in Moscow to recruit fighters for Russia's mercenary Wagner group. The group has been involved in the bloodiest battle of the Ukraine war. And the UK is investing in a crackdown on antisocial behavior. Increased policing and swift trials are on the agenda. More shortly here on NTD News Today. A 17-story-high advertisement is recruiting mercenaries for Russia's Wagner group in Moscow. The force has led Russia's offensive unit in Bakhmut, eastern Ukraine, and it's replenishing ahead of an expected Ukrainian counteroffensive.
A giant recruitment ad for Russia's Wagner mercenary force has appeared on the facade of an office block in northeast Moscow. Wagner is thought to have sustained heavy losses in the eastern Ukrainian city of Bakhmut, the longest, bloodiest battle of the war so far. It fights alongside Russian forces in the region and has sought to replenish troop numbers ahead of a potential Ukrainian counteroffensive. 17 stories high, the ad shows the group's logo and the slogans, "Join the winning team," and "Together we will win." Wagner boss Yevgeny Prigozhin said earlier this month that he aimed to recruit 30,000 new fighters by mid-May. Ukrainian and Western officials say Wagner is sending poorly prepared fighters to certain death. For months, Wagner has spearheaded Russia's push to take the small city of Bakhmut, which is now in ruins. Both sides have referred to Bakhmut as a meat grinder. Prigozhin has said his men's task there is to bleed the Ukrainian army dry.
An exodus of Western car brands is narrowing options for Russian consumers, and Chinese automakers are quickly filling the gap. Many Russians are left with no choice but to embrace Chinese brands. Here are the details.
Russian car buyers have some new brand names to get their heads around. Chinese makers have rushed in to fill the gap left by Western firms that have pulled out. That leaves shoppers to learn about companies like Vows and Geely. So far, the welcome is wary at best. Car buyers Reuters spoke to were unsure about the quality of the new offerings. At the price they're charging, the plastics look cheap, says one man. Auto journalist Sergei Aslanyan says that reflects a Russian perception that Chinese products are down market.
If a person in Russia wants to put somebody down, they will say that, hey, you have a Chinese phone or your car is Chinese. At the moment, people are not that hungry to show demand for Chinese products. We need to end up like Cuba first, to turn into pedestrians over the years, and then maybe we will lower the expectations enough for Chinese cars.
Sales figures tell a different story, though. Chinese brands now have almost 40% of Russia's car market, up from less than 10% early last year. The main driver may be the simple fact of availability. In the eastern city of Vladivostok, Vladimir Shestak sells Western and Chinese brands.
In light of all the recent events, we mostly rely on Geely sales now. But we continue to sell Mercedes cars. Some of them are bought via parallel import. Some are leftover stock from before.
Russians increasingly have little choice, with most Western brands already gone. Volkswagen's Skoda unit is currently in the final stages of negotiating a deal to sell its assets. The departure of such firms was one factor in a near 60% slump in total car sales last year. For many buyers, that means it may soon be a case of go Chinese or catch the bus.
White House National Security spokesman John Kirby is trying to calm nerves on the threat of Russia using nuclear arms in Ukraine. He says there's no sign that Russian President Vladimir Putin is preparing to use them. He also played down the relationship between Russia and China.
These are two nations that see common cause in pushing back on American leadership around the world and leadership of the West, leadership of NATO. And so they are sort of using one another to chafe and to bristle at American leadership around the world. But it remains to be seen, how much of a true alliance we have here.
Kirby says there are clearly limits to what Chinese leader Xi Jinping is willing to do in terms of bolstering up Putin, and that while both nations want to challenge the international rules-based order, only China actually has the resources and capabilities to do so. Kirby says Putin sees that, and that's why he's cozying up to Xi. Finland is one step closer to becoming a NATO member after the Hungarian parliament approves the move. Hungary's parliament voted by a margin of 182 to 6 in favor of the bill. Finland now only needs approval from Turkey to join the NATO alliance. Finland and Sweden asked to join the transatlantic military alliance last year after Russia invaded Ukraine. They need the nod from all 30 members. Sweden's bid remains stalled in both Hungarian and Turkish parliaments. In the UK, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has pledged to invest £160 million, close to $200 million, to stamp out antisocial behavior. The new measures will see trials of swifter justice and increased policing in areas deemed to have high amounts of low-level crime. Here's the story.
Prime Minister Rishi Sunak unveiled his plan to tackle antisocial behaviour, promising more police patrols and swifter punishments for those blighting communities. He said the £160 million plan will stamp out antisocial behaviour once and for all.
I also want to make sure that we have a country where all of us, our families, our kids, are growing up in strong communities. Communities that feel safe, communities that are thriving, communities that we all feel proud to call home. And strong communities are built on values.
In what is being called hotspot policing, some areas will trial having enforced police patrols. Under the plan, perpetrators behind antisocial activity will carry out repair and clean-up works within 48 hours of being handed community orders. Offenders will be made to wear high-vis vests or jumpsuits and work under supervision while picking up litter, removing graffiti and washing police cars. Victims of antisocial behaviour will be given a say in how criminals are disciplined to ensure justice is visible and fits the crime.
We're going to have more use of what's called immediate justice, so that those people who are behaving irresponsibly and poorly will have to repair the damage they're causing, clear up the mess that they've made within days of that having been caught, so that justice can be seen to be done.
Under what the government is calling a zero-tolerance approach, laughing gas will also be banned. Policing Minister Chris Philip defended the laughing gas ban by arguing that its use is becoming extremely widespread.
It is the third most consumed drug by people who are under 18. It is being consumed on a very large scale. It is, we think, fueling antisocial behaviour because people kind of loiter in public places while they consume it and then discard the canisters.
The move goes against recommendations from the Advisory Council on the Misuse of Drugs, which recently concluded it would be disproportionate to bring in an outright ban.
Greece is set to hold parliamentary elections on May 21st. That's upon the request of the country's incumbent leader. The Prime Minister's New Democracy Party has been leading the main opposition party in opinion polls, but his government has seen the shadow over from a rail disaster in late February. The crash caused 57 deaths, the most fatal in the country's history. The crisis has sparked massive protests over rail safety. The Prime Minister is calling for a new environment to drive reform. In the tropical Atlantic, a Danish ship came under pirate attack while docking in the Gulf of Guinea. All communication channels with the vessel are down. As of the last communication, all 16 crew members were seeking shelter in a safe room on board. The owner of the oil and chemical tanker is a ship management company based in Dubai. The company is now cooperating with all relevant maritime authorities in the region for help. According to the UN Security Council, the Gulf of Guinea has become a global piracy hotspot in recent years. Police in Peru seized around 2.5 tons of cocaine last week. It was valued at roughly $20 million. The drugs were disguised as ceramic tiles headed for Turkey. Authorities say the bust happened on Friday at a warehouse at Peru's biggest port, El Callao, just outside the capital, Lima. Police displayed the cocaine at a press conference yesterday. It had been fixed to rubber sheets to appear as hundreds of ceramic tiles. They were found packed in wooden boxes inside a shipping container. El Callao's police chief says it's the first time they've found a shipment of illicit drugs with a final destination of Turkey. And still to come, cliffs in France's Normandy region are eroding fast and dropping into the sea. But do officials know the reason why, and how is this affecting residents? The Alps see low snowfall and unseasonably warm temperatures this ski season. A French ski resort offers a range of alternative activities on the mountain. Get the story in just a minute.
We're entering an unprecedented period of economic turmoil. The economy is unstable, our government is in shambles, and the global war on energy has created a domestic crisis. Americans need a way to protect their financial future. One way to ensure your wealth in retirement is by purchasing physical gold and silver. We can help. You can roll any part of your retirement account into a gold or silver IRA. Better yet, you can open a gold or silver IRA in 5 minutes or less using our online application. Preserving your family's financial legacy is a choice that's always available to you. And when you're ready, we're here to help. Call us and speak to one of our IRA professionals. Let's build your financial legacy together. GSI Exchange, wealth for generations to come.
Good to have you back with us. The Paris 2024 Olympic Games are still 15 months away, but construction of the Olympic Athletes Village is already in progress. The village sits about 4 miles north of central Paris, stretching across 3 suburban cities. Officials say its design concept differs from conventional Olympic villages. Architects are first considering the long-term use of the buildings as a local community and then adapting it for the Olympics. That will include adding extra beds for athletes and so on. After the Games, the buildings will remain in use for social and private housing and offices. This extra step poses a challenge for the construction team, but they say they're confident of an on-time delivery.
Most of my colleagues in the past were stressed with the delivery of infrastructure. I must say that on that side, as CEO of Paris 2024, I'm very cool and serene as everything will be delivered on time and on budget. I can never thank them enough for that.
Construction is scheduled for January with full delivery in March. The athletes' rooms won't have air conditioning, but will use a cooling system instead. And the vast majority of athletes will be within half an hour of their training areas and competitions. The village will also include a police station to ensure security. In Normandy, France, a cliff dropped into the ocean in February. Landslides are normal in this region, but now they're moving dangerously close to buildings.
This is what Normandy's Cap Fernier cliff looked like decades ago. And this is what it looks like now. A 130 by 50-foot segment of it vanished on February 22nd in the latest episode of cliffside erosion facing this small French town. Residents of Fécamp say they were less shocked.
We heard a big boom and felt the ground tremble beneath our feet. The couch, the TV, nothing moved, but we felt the earth quake beneath our feet.
They say the incident is symbolic of the accelerating pace of erosion here. But why are Normandy's cliffs eroding so quickly? Landslides on the coast are a regular occurrence, according to Fécamp's mayor, David Roussel. He says the town saw 60 of them in 2022 alone. What is new is how dangerously close the eroding parts are to residential areas.
That's especially what we have to consider. To see how to think of urbanization with regard to these residential areas amid the receding coastline, which is spreading in our region.
But February's landslide equated to 100 years worth of erosion, taking place in a single day, according to France's Center for Environmental Planning.
We have climate change. We had very dry and hot summers with little rains. Then came a period of heavy rains. Then, a few weeks ago, we had temperatures of 23 or 14 degrees Fahrenheit, meaning a frost period that tends to make water contract and cause even more fissures on rocks. We have rising water levels and fewer pebbles near the cliffs. There are fewer than before because of the pier. And so all these elements combined accelerate the erosion system.
Normandy isn't alone in facing these issues. France's Coastal Protection Agency estimates that some 50,000 residences around France are in zones that will require them to be moved by the end of the century. In early February, an apartment building in Soulac-sur-Mer in southwestern France was demolished. The town is suffering some of the fastest coastal erosions in the country, with beaches disappearing at a rate of about 8 feet per year in past decades. As for Fécamp, a 100-meter security perimeter has been established around the eroded cliff. In the rubble surrounding it, a broken cross serves as a reminder of what once stood in its place.
At a French ski resort, you can meet native eagles. It's just one of the many activities they're offering, as low snowfall and unseasonably warm temperatures make for poor skiing conditions in the Alps. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more.
Equipped with a leather glove and food pouch, Jacques-Olivier Travers speeds down a mountain near the French ski resort Morzine. At age 14, Travers became a professional falconer. Now 24, he runs his own animal park dedicated to birds of prey.
4 years ago, we decided to come in mountains because we thought that it was the best place to show birds of prey. Into the wild, they live naturally in this area, and people come here to ski and they don't know that eagle lives here, vulture lives here.
Travers' reintroduction program has already sent 4 young birds into the wild. He hopes to reintroduce 80 more. In January, the lack of snow left patches of earth visible in some of Europe's most popular skiing destinations. So alternative activities became even more important for ski resorts.
It's been a bad winter, we can say, concerning the snow level. We of course have Avoya, which is a place where we can always ski, but that's a real concern for us. So we have to develop the extra activities.
Paragliding is another activity for thrill seekers when there isn't much snow. Albert Beau has been paragliding for over 40 years.
Paragliding is just a sail, you put over your head like a kite. And after, when it's over your head, with a gentle run, you in the air and you fly.
Back on the ground, horses pull skiers through the snow. It's called ski-juring. Instructor Alex Vigneault steers the group.
You don't have to watch out all the time where you put your skis. The horse is doing it for you. And it's another sensations as riding them, because you see them in front of you. You see the how powerful they are.
Conditions haven't been optimal in the Alps this ski season, but some fresh powder this month could offer a glimmer of hope. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Cruises are surging in popularity. Carnival Cruise reported bookings for future cruises during the first quarter of 2023 reached a peak for any quarter in its history. In fact, the company reported Monday future bookings broke records for its North America and Australia segment, as well as its Europe segment. Bookings for Europe now stand at over 80% of its 2019 levels before the pandemic. At the same time, this year's North America and Australia's booking curve mirrors 2019 at its peak. This despite higher ticket prices in 2023. Carnival says it expects the growth to continue. And still to come, surfers are in for a new kind of wave in Hawaii, one that lets them catch the perfect swell every time, but in a German fashion. And Australia's Sydney Opera House gears up for its 50th anniversary. Since its opening, the venue has hosted over 100,000 performances. We'll take a look right after the break. If you're afraid of sharks but always wanted to try surfing, you may have another option. A German company has created a unique engineering feat that doesn't involve the ocean at all. Let's find out more.
For German company CityWave, no wind is needed to create waves. The company pioneered in creating venues with artificial waves where surfers can catch the perfect wave every time. The concept has already been applied in several locations worldwide. Most recently on the island of Hawaii, which at a width of 100 feet is also the largest one. Company director Rainer Klimaszewski says the inspiration for this project came to him when he was studying in Munich.
There was our daily meeting place. We'd surf in the local river. That's when it occurred to me, this can be artificially created anywhere, not just here in Munich in a river, but in any river anywhere in the world.
The aim is to provide an alternative for surfers, as some surfing spots tend to get a bit crowded, as well as give Olympic surfers the option to practice their skills. Construction of the venue took around 2.5 years, powered by solar-powered turbines at a cost of just over $40 million. But the concept doesn't resonate with everyone.
I have come across this on Instagram, but to be honest, I think it's a stupid idea, especially in Hawaii, which is the birthplace of many great surfers. So I would actually say it's nonsense.
Even though I think the idea of a stationary wave is pretty cool and it's lots of fun as I have tried it myself, but I have seen from pictures that directly behind it is the ocean. So it's a bit sad that one can catch the perfect wave there when the ocean has so much to offer, and especially in Hawaii, where you can find endless awesome waves.
Time will tell if the venue will be a success, as it doesn't come cheap. A 45-minute session costs around $150. So for some, natural waves may prove more cost-effective.
A new immersive Peter Rabbit show for families has opened in Covent Garden in London. Part performance and part puppetry, Peter Rabbit Easter Adventure allows audiences to interact with the beloved characters from Beatrix Potter. Let's take a look.
I'm so sorry. Where are my manners? All of this blabbing on. I haven't even introduced myself. I am Beatrix Potter.
And her best friend in the whole world is a mushroom.
Peter, what are you doing here?
Peter Rabbit and other characters from Beatrix Potter's much-loved children's tales are taking over London's Covent Garden. Part of a new immersive Easter family experience, the Peter Rabbit Easter Adventure mixes live performance and puppetry. Visitors can join Potter on a mission to rescue Jemima Puddle Duck from grouchy gardener Mr. McGregor.
It's a story about self-belief, it's a story that involves puppets, it's funny, it's fast, and it's a great show for all the family.
The story begins in Potter's study and then moves on to different sets in locations around the Covent Garden piazza. There are some tasks for the audiences to solve along the way.
So there are elements of the show that are interactive, there are elements of it that are like a traditional theatre show, and some parts of it that are like a guided walking tour of one of the best markets in the world.
Some of the scenes take place outside in the public eye. The director said that was the most fun part of the show, as the actors could use the full range of their abilities.
They have scenes that feel very small and very intimate and are about connection, and then scenes that are out in Covent Garden Market that are about pure entertainment and grabbing audiences.
The Peter Rabbit Easter Adventure was produced by Histrionic Productions and follows its successful Peter Rabbit Garden Adventure, which was held at Blenheim Palace last summer.
So there was a natural link between why Mr. McGregor, and indeed Peter and his friends, might be in Covent Garden. And that helps us suspend disbelief, because we want our audiences to walk into this show and genuinely feel like they've stepped back into old London.
Peter Rabbit Easter Adventure opens to the public on Wednesday and will run until April the 16th.
Australia's Sydney Opera House is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. Queen Elizabeth II oversaw the grand opening of the iconic building in 1973. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details.
Peter Tucker started working at the Sydney Opera House before it even opened. On the 50th anniversary of the building, he recalls his first day of work.
I got up in the morning and my wife went into labour, so I had to rush my wife off to hospital, at Paddington Hospital. Then I made my way down here and I commenced work as a builder's labourer. And the first day here was good. They introduced me to a jackhammer.
In 1956, over 200 architects submitted designs in a competition for the Opera House. Danish architect Jorn Utzon won with his design.
In that the judges could see the innovative design, the response to the setting on the beautiful Sydney Harbour, and really what this place could be, which is a sculpture, an artwork in itself to celebrate and house the performing arts.
The Sydney Opera House has been home to various resident companies. They include the Sydney Symphony Orchestra, the Sydney Theatre Company, Opera Australia, the Australian Ballet, and more.
The numbers are amazing. It's 118,000 at last count performances have happened in the Opera House, and 63 million seats have been sold. So that's an extraordinary number of people who had an experience here.
The original cost of the building was estimated at $7.8 million. The final bill was $114 million.
Without the Australian people, the public, we wouldn't have this place. They funded the Opera House through New South Wales lottery, so it was all funded by Australian people for the Australian people.
Construction took 14 years. On October 20th, 1973, Queen Elizabeth II officially opened the Sydney Opera House. In the 50 years since then, the venue has welcomed many guests. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Pope John Paul II, and Nelson Mandela are just a few.
There's a new show coming in, there's a VIP visiting, there's every day there's just something different.
Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
A cow-calf in southern Australia has people grinning from ear to ear. It's not just because he's named Happy, he also wears a big smile on his back. Happy is a 1-month-old Holstein Friesian bull calf. He earned his nickname for his distinctive black and white smiley face markings. This has made him a public favorite, especially among children.
We love Happy!
Oh my goodness, Happy has been so popular, swarmed by all the school kids that have come through. They've all wanted to see Happy. They've gone over there and he stood up for them and they could see he's happy, smiling.
Local media reports that the calf's owner has decided to sell him to an agricultural and farming event known as Farm World. The proceeds, about $6,000, will go to a local hospital. Happy will attend a Farm World as a mascot and live there afterwards. Get ready to look up to the sky because a planetary parade is coming. The alignment of Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Uranus will become visible Friday and continue that way over the next couple of weeks. Onlookers should be able to catch the best glimpse of the 5-planet alignment on Tuesday evening just after sunset. It will be visible just underneath the crescent moon across the northern and southern hemispheres. Alignments like this one appear every few years or so. An expert says much of it will be visible to the naked eye, even in urban areas with significant light pollution. That's all for today's program. We're really glad to have you with us. Please send us an email if you'd like to tell us something. We're going to put it on screen. For podcasters, that's news.today@ntd.com. I'm Kevin Hogan, NTD News, New York City.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Did you know YouTube only keeps selective videos on its platform? So if you want to make sure you get the full picture, just subscribe to our newsletter. Go to newsletter.ntd.com and sign up. It's free.